When discussing the month of Elul, Maimonides, the Rambam, writes that even though there's no source in the Torah to blow shofar during the month of Elul, there is a hint in the verse Uru Yishena Mishinaschem, where the prophet tells the Jewish people, wake up from your slumber. So the Rambam seems to be equating the scenario during Elul to a situation where we need to wake up. What is it supposed to mean? What does it mean? Are we sleeping? What exactly is it supposed to mean? You know, we know the Talmud tells us something very interesting. It says sleep is a 60th of death, right? What happens when a person dies? When they die, their soul departs or detaches from their body, right? When they're alive, they're a body that has a soul that's giving it life, and that's how it moves and talks and acts and lives. And the moment someone dies, their soul simply detached from that body, and the body becomes a lifeless, carcass, and the soul is separate now. That's what death is. When a person sleeps, obviously he's not dead, but to a certain extent, his soul has detached somewhat from his body. That's why his body is, when he's sleeping, somewhat lifeless. It's not moving. Of course, it's breathing, but it's not moving. It's not doing anything. And his soul, to some extent, detached. The Talmud tells us a 60th of death. Sleep is a 60th. So in a 60th type of way, in a fraction of a way, it kind of detached from the body. And that's why in the morning we say Modani. We thank God for giving us back our soul. That's what the Modani is. Because the soul, to some extent, detached from the body, to a small extent. So, that's on a physical level. So the soul gives life, and the soul is now somewhat detached during sleep. Well, the Talmud tells us also that Rishayim b'chayei nikrayim meis, that wicked people, even when they're alive, they're called dead, right? They're called dead. Even though they're alive, they're walking, eating, breathing, doing whatever they do. Because they're wicked, the Talmud calls them dead. Now, what their dead is, once again, using the same analogy, is that they are detached from any spirituality. They chose a life of physicality, of chasing frivolities and whatnot. And their life is now, they are completely detached from their spirituality to the point that they're called dead. Now, even though they're eating and breathing, their soul is still giving them physical life. Spiritually, they're dead. So what the Talmud seems to be telling us is that, yes, that's complete. That's completely wicked people. They are on the level of dead. They have no connection to spirituality. Well, then the rest of us are sometimes perhaps in a situation of slumber, of sleeping, where we are a 60th of that type of dead, where we are detached from our spirituality. And during the month of Elul, our job is to reconnect with that spirituality, to reawaken the spirituality within us. In other words, we get distracted from all that. We actually have a soul. We're connected, thankfully, to that soul, but it's a very weak connection. And the soul, what does the soul want? It's a spiritual being that wants spiritual things. It wants to connect to the Almighty. It wants to connect to prayer, to heartfelt prayer. It wants to connect to God through Torah study and through mitzvah observance. That's what it wants. But it's quieted down all year because there are other desires that the body goes after, other materialistic things that overpower and overshadow what the soul wants. So during the month of Elul, it explains to us, the Rambam, that our job is to wake that up again, to reconnect to the soul, to reconnect to what that soul wants. So at least for the month of Elul, we are invigorated spiritually, living a more spiritual reality. This is ultimately the goal of Elul, to try to reawaken that, to come into Rosh Hashanah spiritual people, soulful people, people who are connected to the neshama. I wish you all a great, great Shabbos.